talk is not going to be on a Celtic language. It's just, it's on Luxembourgish. And then the idea is actually we want to see how was an under-resourced language like Luxembourgish learned from, let's say, a bigger, well-resourced language like German. And they were both within the family group. So we have Cedric Lothritz from Luxembourg. So thank you for coming all the way to Lancaster. And you've got 20 minutes and I'll be like showing you.
Thank you very much. I guess the audience can hear me. Yes, okay. So yeah, good afternoon. My name is Cedric. I'm from the University of Luxembourg, where I was a postdoc until 2 months ago. And yeah, the reason that Mo mentioned Luxembourgish this morning is mainly because of me. Unfortunately, the only thing that I have to do with Celtic languages is that my first name may or may not have been inspired by an old Celtic name, but I'm not sure. So at least there's that. So yeah, let's maybe start with saying what is the Luxembourgish language actually. It's a low-resource language spoken in Luxembourg, and it's a Moselle Franconian dialect, which in turn is a Western Germanic dialect. And it has been a spoken language at the start, but since 1984 it has also been formalized with proper grammar and spelling, and since then it has also been the national language of Luxembourg. As it is a Germanic descendant of a Germanic language, it is very close to German, with a very similar syntax and large overlapping vocabulary. But it is a low-resource language, about 600,000 Luxembourgish speakers, compared to almost 100 million native German speakers, so to put that a bit in perspective. And until 3 years ago, there was no actual Luxembourgish language model, except for mbird, which was trained on the 100 most covered Wikipedia articles, which included Luxembourgish. And there also was, there still is, a Luxembourgish spacey model, and there have been more Luxembourgish tools, but no contextual language model for the language yet. Until 3 years ago, when I coincidentally started actually working on that. So, as I mentioned, Luxembourgish and German are very similar, and the goal that we set ourselves was to exploit this similarity between both languages to create Luxembourgish language models. And we want to tackle this challenge from two different angles. First one from through the point of data augmentation, where we want to augment the data using partial translation, which I will explain more later, to create under quotes more Luxembourgish data. And from another angle, where we want to use transfer learning to use German language models to teach them how to understand Luxembourgish. So yeah, why do he want to exploit this relationship between both languages is, as you all know, language models, they require a huge amount of data to train them. Oh, sorry. Let's take this a little closer. But yeah, this data is usually not available for low-resource languages, such as Luxembourgish, but I guess also Cornish now, and Manx, and Scottish Gaelish. But the nice thing is that many low-resource languages, they are in the same language family as many widespread languages. And like I said just now, Luxembourgish is a Germanic language, closely related to German and Dutch. Romansh, which is spoken in Switzerland, in some cantons of Switzerland, which is a Romance language related to French and Italian. And then we have Scottish Gaelic, which is, as you know, a Celtic language, also Manx and Breton, which are also all low-resource languages, as you know. And typically, these languages belonging in the same family, they also share many similarities among them, mainly in terms of syntax and vocabulary, which is the case for us. And as a small side note, people who speak a given language, they often also understand related languages. For instance, I speak Luxembourgish and German, and this allows me to partially understand Dutch. I can't speak it, but I can read it at least. Same for Italian. I can understand it to a degree because I speak French. And I'm pretty sure you also have your own experiences that are similar to that. So this leads me to our first step for what we undertook to create Luxembourgish language models, in particular to explore a novel data augmentation technique based on translation to create the first Luxembourgish bird model called Luxembird. So as I mentioned several times, German and Luxembourgish are similar to each other. The syntax between both languages is almost identical. There are just a few words sometimes swapped around. And a very high overlap between vocabularies as well, where most words, they look pretty similar to each other. But there are still some differences. Luxembourgish has important lots of words from French. For instance, thanks in French would be merci. In Luxembourgish, we would say merci. So they're quite similar, I think. And both languages, another difference is that both languages have their own idioms. And if you try to translate idioms literally, the listener might end up understanding only train station, which is actually a German idiom. But still, these are only a few caveats. But despite those, we can still translate German sentences fairly easily with very simple means through table lookup, as we will show later, without losing too much meaning in most cases. And the goal for this particular study was to take the advantage of this similarity to use partial translation using table lookup to create enough pre-training data for low-resource languages. So we were a bit inspired by by other studies which did something similar, in particular for using the Dutch language to create an Afrikaans model, where they trained the model on bilingual data, containing both Dutch and Afrikaans. And they used that fact to create low-resource languages using a closely related auxiliary language, which we want to do, which we did the same for Luxembourgish, using German as our auxiliary language. Yeah, as I just said. And in addition, we use this partial translation strategy to translate the German subset of our training data to make it more similar to Luxembourgish. And using this simple technique, we increased the original data set containing 6 million sentences to 12 million sentences. And using this data, we then just simply trained a model on the masked language modeling task to create Luxembird, which was at the time the first bird model. But since then, there has been more work, and there are, I guess, half a dozen now. And here you can see a small example of how we do it. Like I said, we used the German dataset, specifically the German Wikipedia, from where we extracted some sentences. In this example, it's something related to chemistry, I think, where there are 26 known isotopes, only 2 of which appear in nature, and this is what it means. The original German sentence, bekannt sind 26 Isotope, wovon nur 2 natürlich vorkommen. We used this sentence, and we specifically focused on non-ambiguous function words in the sentences that we can easily translate without losing the original meaning. So, and this gives us this, what I call a pseudo-Luxemburgish sentence. Bekannt sind 26 Isotope, wovon nimmen 2 natürlich vorkommen. And as you can see in at the very bottom, that this Frankenstein together sentence is still pretty close to the actual Luxembourgish translation. So we can use this kind of very easy method to create new Luxembourgish data that we can then train a model on. Of course, there was not only Luxembourgish models that were missing, but there were also Luxembourgish data sets that were missing, and so we had to create those as well for ourselves. And the original study was only made on the 5 blue ones that you can see there. But in total, we have 9 of them, ranging from very simple classification tasks, from news classification up to natural language understanding tasks like sentiment analysis. And for the very first study, we compared our Luxembourg model to MBERT, and we found that even though in most cases it's a very slight difference, Luxembourg still outperformed MBERT in these 5 out of 6 tasks that we checked. And most of the time only slightly, but in the case of intent classification, we saw a pretty large difference. And later, when we added the new tasks, we saw more tasks where Luxembourg performed better than MBERT. But for now, we come to the second part of my talk, which is about this transfer learning that I mentioned earlier. Luxembourg itself was pre-trained from scratch, but there are other language models, German language models, like Gotthard and also MBERT, which were either completely or partially trained on German. And we want to take advantage of that because similarly to the languages themselves, language models for related languages, we can also share a significant percentage of their vocabularies. Here we see the example for Luxembourg and Gotthard, whose vocabularies contain 30,000 and 52,000 tokens respectively, and they have an overlap of about 18,000. So about 60% of Luxembourg's vocabulary also contained in Gotthard. And we see a similar trend in Romance languages, a bit of the Spanish one, Italian BERT, and the French Camembert model. They also have some overlaps respectively. And particularly the Italian and the French one, where the overlap is about 50%. So we want to take advantage of these overlaps as well, and take, okay, let's start with this. So the goal of this is to, instead of training a language model from scratch, as we did with Luxembourg, we wanted to preload a German model and continue to pre-train this to get new language models that hopefully perform better. So we did this study using MBERT and Gotthard. We used the same data that we used to pre-train Luxembourg and pre-train those models on that. And this gave us 2 new language models, LB MBERT and LB Gotthard. So for this study, we used those new models, as well as as baseline. We took the untrained models, MBERT and Gotthard, and in addition, we took the original Luxembourg and the ABERT, which is a purely Luxembourgish language model, which was trained on original Luxembourgish data that was data augmented with classical word replacement techniques. So we have 6 models in total, and we compare them. We fine-tune them on all of these 9 data sets that we had. And here you can see the results. They're a bit messy. But typically what we found is that our newly trained models, they most of the time outperformed the other models that we had. The Luxembourg and the A-Bird, the 2 original models, they were typically somewhere between the low baselines and the new models. And we found that the model that was trained on the purely German Gottbert, LB Gottbert, that this one performed best in most of the cases. I think 5 out of 9 where it performed best. So we're pretty happy with those results. They confirmed what we hoped was true. But we think that these approaches can also be generalized to other languages, including Celtic ones. So they have these kinds of approaches have already been employed, like I said earlier, where other studies fine-tuned a Dutch. We used the Dutch and Afrikaans languages to train a Afrikaans model. We did the same for a Latvian model that was also trained on Lithuanian data. And last year at CLIDA, I saw someone present a Faroese bird model that was trained using Scandinavian languages. So we can see that this can be generalized to other languages, and I'm pretty sure Celtic languages can take advantage of this as well. But apart from that, we can also make use of LLMs, which have been exploding recently, where these LLMs, they lead to, I think, studies in cross-lingual transfer to become more and more important. And so I already did some experiments, some quick experiments on using ChatGPT for Luxembourgish. I found that it understood Luxembourgish very well, but it was pretty bad at actually generating Luxembourgish. It sounded like someone just learning Luxembourgish and having pretty much trouble with it. Well, so at least from my side, there will be lots of work to be done, which I'm happy about. Well, I'm pretty sure that, like I said, these findings can also be applied at least to a degree on Celtic languages. I'm not an expert on them, so you are the expert on that. I believe Irish could be used as an auxiliary language to train a Scottish Gaelic model. Probably in the same case, Welsh could be used to train a Cornish model, but I'm not sure. This basically, these are some references. The first 2 are our own papers where you can find more details on what I just presented, and the other 2 are just more papers that use these same approaches. And that's already it for my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, that's interesting. Any questions? So there was a question before about whether Breton could learn from French. Do you think that would?
So I only know that it's also spoken in Brittany, but I'm not sure how closely those are related. If there is a large overlap or large similarity between French and Breton, pretty sure it can be done, yes.
And then, let's go to Abigail, then I'll see if I have time to ask you a question after.
Thank you very much. Just a question popped into my mind there was, are there any studies that you know of that look at, say, the effects of transfer learning related to the size of the resources that you have? Obviously, the less resources you have in the first place, the more beyond that, it's actually, it's not helping as much.
So I think you might find the answer actually in this paper right here. I think it's actually also called "Are all languages created equal in multilingual birds?" So multilingual birds. So you can already find the gives you already a hint that you might find the answer there. But the short answer is yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. One very quick, fully question, and then we go for the next.
Hi, thanks, Vinny. Something new, and don't worry if you don't know the answer to it, but so I know that a lot of these languages will share words lexically, but I wonder if they share the same senses. And do you know of any studies into, say, where a word would occupy a different word embedding space, or because it has a different sense, even though they lexically match up? You know what I mean? The senses would diverge, and has that been studied?
I can't, like I said, I can't actually tell you, but
Yeah,
it's a very interesting point, actually. I'm pretty sure someone has also thought about it. But yeah, I agree with you that there are just words that seem like they that are very closely related. They look like they're closely related. They have completely different meanings. But I don't have a example for it, but pretty sure there exists plenty. But
there's a spectrum of them, I would say. But yeah, we can talk about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.